My wife danced with another man at my party as if I was invisible. The man was dipping dollar bills into my wife's shirt and pants, shouting, "Your husband can disappear. I own you tonight." Everyone laughed, but regretted it the second I left. Now he knows who I am. My name's Grayson Ward, and I'm going to tell you about the night I learned that throwing yourself a birthday party is basically like giving the universe permission to pants you in front of everyone you've ever met. Look, I'm not saying I'm a genius, but I've designed buildings that touch clouds, brokered deals that would make your accountant weep with joy, and somehow managed to convince a woman way out of my league to marry me. So naturally, I figured organizing one lousy birthday party would be a cakewalk. Spoiler alert, I was wrong. So catastrophically, hilariously, soul-crushingly wrong that if my life were a movie, this would be the scene where the audience starts nervously laughing because they can't tell if it's a comedy or a tragedy anymore. I'd gone all out for this thing. We're talking rooftop restaurant with a view that made the Chicago skyline look like it was photoshopped by God himself. I hired a live band, not some garage outfit that plays Wonderwall on repeat, but an actual jazz ensemble with a guy who'd played backup for someone who once opened for John Legend. Close enough to famous for me. I sent out invitations 3 weeks in advance, the fancy kind with embossed lettering that probably cost more per square inch than my first apartment. My family came, even Aunt Carol, who still asks me when I'm going to get a real job, despite the fact that I pull in more annually than her entire book club combined. My colleagues showed up in their designer suits, already half drunk from pre-gaming because apparently nobody goes to parties sober anymore when you're over 30. Friends from college, guys from my gym, even my neighbors who I'm pretty sure only came for the open bar. They were all there. And Lydia. Sweet merciful heaven, Lydia looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine spread for women who married up and know it. She was wearing this emerald green dress that probably violated several laws of physics with how it defied gravity. Her hair done up in that effortless way that I know for a fact takes 3 hours and costs roughly what a small nation spends on infrastructure. She was glowing, radiant, the kind of beautiful that makes other women jealous and makes men walk into glass doors because they're not watching where they're going. I remember thinking, as I stood there with a whiskey in my hand and 50 people singing, "Happy Birthday," off-key, that I was the luckiest son of a gun in the entire Midwest. I was feeling like a king, the kind you see in movies right before everything goes sideways. You know that moment where the hero is standing on top of the world, chest puffed out, thinking he's invincible? That was me at approximately 9:47 p.m. on a Saturday in June. The band was crushing it, playing this smooth rendition of "Fly Me to the Moon" that made even my tone-deaf cousin start swaying. The food was immaculate, those little bacon-wrapped dates that rich people pretend aren't just fancy pigs in a blanket, sushi that probably required a permit to catch, and a birthday cake that cost more than my first car. People were laughing, clinking glasses, telling stories about me that were 70% embellished and 30% straight-up lies. But hey, that's what birthdays are for, right? I made my rounds like a politician at a fundraiser, shaking hands, accepting congratulations on being another year closer to needing reading glasses and daily fiber supplements. My buddy Riley slapped me on the back so hard I almost dropped my drink and said something profound like, "Bro, 38 looks good on you, even though you're basically almost 40 and that's practically ancient." Thanks, Riley. Real touching. My boss gave me a bottle of scotch that probably cost more than most people's car payments, and made some joke about how I'd need it for surviving another year married. Everyone laughed. I laughed. Lydia laughed. We were all just laughing and drinking and pretending that life was one long, perfect highlight reel. That's when I should have known something was off. Because in my experience, the universe doesn't let you feel that good for that long without dropping an anvil on your head, Coyote style. But I was too busy being the man of the hour, soaking up the attention like a plant that had been stuck in a dark closet for 6 months, to notice the storm clouds gathering in the form of one Trent Monroe and his absolutely breathtaking lack of boundaries. I was standing near the bar, chatting with my architect partner Greg about some zoning nonsense that would bore you to tears, when I noticed Lydia on the dance floor. Nothing unusual there. She loves dancing, always has. Even when we're at home and some random song comes on the radio, she'll start twirling around the kitchen like we're in some kind of rom-com. It's adorable, honestly, one of the things I love about her. So I glanced over, smiled at how happy she looked, and went back to my conversation about load-bearing walls or whatever Greg was droning on about. But then I noticed the crowd around her was getting bigger. And louder. People were pulling out their phones, which in 2025 is basically the universal signal that something either amazing or terrible is happening. I excused myself from Greg mid-sentence. He probably didn't even notice, and moved closer to see what the fuss was about. That's when I saw him. Trent Monroe, a guy I'd met exactly twice before and already disliked both times, was dancing with my wife. And when I say dancing, I'm using the term loosely, because what he was actually doing was grinding up on her like they were teenagers at prom and the chaperones had all gone home. But wait, it gets better. Because Trent, in his infinite wisdom and complete absence of social awareness, had decided that the appropriate way to celebrate my birthday was to start pulling dollar bills out of his wallet, and, I kid you not, tucking them into my wife's dress. Not handing them to her. Not making it rain like some kind of hip-hop video parody. No, he was deliberately, methodically, showily dipping those bills down the front of her dress like she was a stripper, and he was the world's most obnoxious patron at a bachelor party. The crowd went wild. People were hooting, hollering, filming, laughing their asses off like this was the greatest entertainment they'd seen since that time Chad from accounting got drunk at the Christmas party and tried to breakdance. My coworkers had their phones out, definitely already uploading this to every social media platform known to mankind. The band kept playing like nothing was wrong, probably because they'd seen weirder stuff at weddings. And Lydia? My beautiful, elegant, supposed partner in life? She was giggling. Actually giggling, like this was all just harmless fun and not a complete demolition of our marriage in front of 50 witnesses and probably 1,000 more once this hit Instagram. I stood there with my whiskey glass, watching this circus unfold, and somewhere in the back of my mind, a little voice that sounded suspiciously like my therapist was saying, "Grayson, this is what we call a defining moment." I smiled. Not a real smile. The kind of smile you give when you're a pressure cooker 3 seconds from exploding but you're in public so you have to pretend everything's fine. The kind of smile that hides nuclear rage behind 32 teeth and years of learning to mask your feelings in boardrooms full of sharks. Funny thing about life? You never see the knife coming. Especially when it's wrapped in glitter and pretending to be a charity dance. Everyone was laughing, the band was playing, and I was sipping my whiskey thinking, what a night. I just didn't know the joke was me. Here's the thing about watching your life implode in slow motion. Your brain does this weird thing where it tries to rationalize the insanity happening right in front of your eyeballs. It's like a defense mechanism, some kind of psychological airbag that deploys to keep you from completely losing your mind in public. So when I first saw Lydia dancing with Trent Monroe, and I mean really saw it, not just the casual glance I'd given before, my brain immediately went into damage control mode. It's fine. It whispered. It's harmless. It's your birthday. People dance at parties. This is normal. You're being paranoid. Maybe lay off the whiskey. Trent Monroe. Even his name sounds like a guy who peaked in high school and has been chasing that high ever since. He's one of those self-proclaimed entrepreneurs who's always got 15 different business cards in his wallet, and none of them mean anything. Last I heard, he was selling protein powder through some multi-level marketing scheme that definitely isn't a pyramid scheme, bro. It's about building your empire and crushing your goals and other motivational garbage that sounds like it came from a desk calendar at a corporate retreat. He's got that kind of charm that works on a very specific type of person, the kind who thinks that confidence and competence are the same thing, that a bright smile can substitute for an actual personality, and that shouting about the grind makes you a business genius instead of just loud and annoying. Women seem to think he's attractive, which I guess I can understand if you're into the whole human Ken doll with the depth of a puddle aesthetic. He's got that gym bro build that screams. I spend 4 hours a day taking mirror selfies and another 3 hours posting them. Perfect teeth that are definitely veneers, and hair that has more product in it than a Walgreens beauty aisle. Guys, on the other hand, take one look at Trent and immediately know he's the type who'll sleep with your girlfriend, steal your protein shaker, and then try to recruit you into his downline. He makes men suspicious and women temporarily lose about 40 IQ points, which is apparently exactly what was happening on my dance floor at my birthday party. At first, and I mean at the very beginning of this disaster, before it spiraled into something that would haunt my nightmares for months, it really did seem harmless. Lydia was just dancing. The band had transitioned into something more upbeat, some modern jazz fusion thing that made people want to move, and she'd been pulled onto the dance floor by her friend Monica, who works in marketing and thinks everything is a networking opportunity. I watched them for a second, saw Lydia laughing and spinning, and thought, sure, let her have fun. It's my birthday. She's been planning this thing for weeks. She deserves to cut loose. I'm not one of those psycho-controlling husbands who needs to monitor his wife's every movement like she's a toddler near a swimming pool. We're adults. Married adults. Adults who theoretically trust each other enough to survive a simple dance at a party without the fabric of our relationship disintegrating. So I turned back to my conversation with Riley and my cousin Marcus, who were debating whether the Bulls had any chance of being relevant again this decade. Spoiler, they don't. I was halfway through making a point about their terrible draft picks when I heard the crowd get louder. Not normal party loud, but that specific kind of chaos that makes you think either something amazing is happening or someone's about to get arrested. I looked over again, and that's when I saw that Monica had left the dance floor and been replaced by Trent freaking Monroe, who apparently had decided that my wife needed a dance partner with all the subtlety of a monster truck rally. He was close. Too close. The kind of close that makes you wonder if he's heard of personal space or if he thinks it's a myth like Bigfoot or ethical billionaires. But even then, I told myself to stay cool. Maybe he's just a bad dancer. Maybe he doesn't realize he's basically dry humping my wife in front of God and the entire Chicago social scene. I took a sip of my whiskey, trying to be the bigger man, trying to channel all those anger management techniques my therapist taught me during my high-stress project phase last year. Breathe, Grayson, I told myself. It's just a dance. It doesn't mean anything. You're secure in your marriage. You're a mature, evolved man who doesn't need to pee on his territory like some kind of caveman. Then Trent reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. And I thought, okay, weird, but maybe he's putting it away so it doesn't fall out while he's dancing. That would have been the reasonable explanation. The normal explanation. But Trent Monroe isn't reasonable or normal. He's a walking red flag factory, and he was about to manufacture the biggest, brightest red flag anyone had ever seen. He pulled out a dollar bill. Then another. Then another. And before my brain could even process what was happening, he started tucking them into Lydia's dress. Not handing them to her like a tip for good service. Not making it rain in some playful, albeit tasteless, way. No, he was deliberately, slowly, theatrically dipping those dollar bills down the front of her dress, his fingers lingering way longer than necessary, like he was fishing for change in a couch cushion, except the couch was my wife, and the change was my rapidly disappearing dignity. The crowd absolutely lost it. People were screaming, laughing, pulling out their phones faster than they would for a celebrity sighting. I saw Jenkins from the office holding his phone up with both hands like he was filming the moon landing. My cousin's girlfriend had her mouth hanging open so wide you could have parked a Toyota in there. Even the bartender stopped pouring drinks to watch this train wreck unfold. And the worst part, the absolute soul-crushing, ego-demolishing, faith-in-humanity-destroying worst part, was that Lydia was laughing. Not uncomfortable laughing, not nervous. Please help me. Laughing, but genuine, head thrown back, having the time of her life laughing. Trent was eating it up like a starving man at an all-you-can-eat buffet. He was grinning, waving to the crowd, pulling out more bills like he was trying to set some kind of world record for public humiliation. Someone, I think it was Riley's girlfriend Ashley, shouted, "Make it rain, Trent!" And he actually did, throwing a handful of ones in the air like we were in a music video. They fluttered down around Lydia like the world's most insulting confetti, and she just kept dancing, kept laughing, kept pretending like this was all perfectly normal birthday party behavior. I was standing there, whiskey glass frozen halfway to my mouth, watching my marriage get auctioned off for singles like a clearance item at a garage sale. Marcus nudged me and said, "Bro, you seeing this?" And I wanted to say, "No, Marcus, I'm actually blind and deaf and also dead inside." But instead I just nodded and took another sip because what else was I supposed to do? Cause a scene at my own birthday party? Storm over there and drag my wife off the dance floor like some possessive psycho? That's what they'd expect. That's what would make me look bad, like I'm the problem, like I'm the insecure husband who can't handle his wife having a little innocent fun. Except there was nothing innocent about what happened next. Trent grabbed the microphone from the band's singer, just yanked it right out of her hand like he owned the place, and shouted into it, his voice booming across the entire rooftop. "Your husband can disappear. I own you tonight." He pointed at me as he said it, making sure everyone knew exactly who he was talking about, making sure there was no ambiguity, no room for interpretation. This wasn't some drunken joke. This was a declaration. A challenge. A public humiliation wrapped in a smile and delivered with a wink. The crowd went silent for exactly half a second before erupting into more laughter, more cheers, more phone cameras capturing every angle of my spectacular downfall. Someone started chanting, "Trent, Trent, Trent!" And others joined in like this was a sporting event, and I was the opposing team getting demolished. Lydia, to her credit, finally looked uncomfortable, her smile faltering just a bit, but she didn't stop him. Didn't tell him to back off. Didn't do anything except stand there with dollar bills sticking out of her dress like the world's worst party favor. I smiled. The kind of smile that hides nuclear rage behind 32 teeth and 15 years of learning to swallow your pride in business meetings. The kind of smile that says, "I'm fine," while your internal organs are staging a revolt. The kind of smile that absolutely nobody believed, but they pretended to because it was easier than acknowledging the atomic bomb that had just detonated in the middle of my birthday cake. Yeah. Real classy. Welcome to 38, Grayson. Happy freaking birthday. You know what's funny about reaching your breaking point? It doesn't feel like breaking at all. There's no dramatic crack, no earth-shattering snap, no orchestral crescendo that lets everyone know you've officially had enough of everyone's nonsense. Instead, it's more like a switch flipping. 1 second you're a functioning human being with emotions and reactions and the basic instinct to defend yourself, and the next you're just done. Completely, utterly, profoundly done with everything and everyone in a way that feels almost peaceful. It's the emotional equivalent of your computer giving up and displaying that blue screen that says, "Yeah, I got nothing. We're shutting down now. Have a nice day." That's where I was at exactly 10:03 p.m. on my 38th birthday, standing in the middle of my own party while 50 people laughed at the spectacle of my wife being turned into a human tip jar by a guy who probably spells entrepreneur with 3 wrong letters. I didn't yell. Didn't scream. Didn't channel my inner Incredible Hulk and start throwing tables off the rooftop like frisbees. Didn't even raise my voice above a conversational tone, which honestly might have scared people more than if I'd gone full psycho. Because here's what nobody tells you about rage: the quiet kind is always scarier than the loud kind. The guy who flips out and throws punches? That guy's predictable. You can see him coming from a mile away. But the guy who just stands there with a smile frozen on his face while his entire world crumbles? That guy's a mystery novel waiting to explode. I just stood there, whiskey glass still in my hand, watching the crowd slowly realize that maybe this wasn't as funny as they thought it was. The laughter started to peter out like a car running out of gas, sputtering and dying in awkward little bursts. People were glancing at each other with those uncomfortable looks you see when someone makes a joke at a funeral and nobody knows whether to laugh or call security. Trent was still grinning like he'd won the lottery, completely oblivious to the fact that he just signed his own death warrant with a smile and a microphone. Lydia had finally stepped away from him, her face flushing red as she started to realize that maybe, just maybe, this had gone too far. The band had stopped playing entirely, which meant the only sound on that rooftop was the Chicago wind and the distant hum of traffic and about 47 people holding their breath waiting to see what I'd do next. Would I throw a punch? Storm over there and cause a scene? Break down crying like some kind of after-school special? The suspense was killing them. I could feel their eyes on me, could practically hear their internal monologues writing the story they'd tell their friends tomorrow. Oh my God, you should have seen it! Grayson totally lost it at his own birthday party. But I didn't give them that satisfaction. Instead, I just stood there, taking another slow sip of my whiskey like I was at a casual happy hour, and not in the middle of the most humiliating moment of my entire life. The whiskey burned going down, which was good because at least I could feel something other than the numb emptiness spreading through my chest like ice water. Riley appeared at my elbow, because of course he did. Riley's been my best friend since college, back when we were both idiots with more ambition than sense, and he's got this radar for when I'm about to do something either brilliant or catastrophically stupid. He's seen me through breakups, business failures, that time I accidentally insulted a client's wife and almost lost $1 million contract, and now this, the crown jewel of bad nights. Bro, he whispered, leaning in close enough that nobody else could hear. You okay? I turned to look at him, and I must have had some kind of expression on my face because he actually took a step back like I'd grown a second head. Oh, Peachy, I said, keeping my voice light and casual, the way you'd comment on the weather or traffic. I love watching my wife get tipped like a Vegas dancer. Really adds flavor to the night. Spices things up. You know how marriage can get boring after a while? Well, problem solved. Next year maybe I'll hire a whole strip club. Really commit to the theme. Riley's eyes went wide. Gray, man, I don't think. You know what the best part is? I continued, still smiling that dead smile that probably made me look like a serial killer in a business casual outfit. I actually paid for this. The venue, the band, the open bar that's currently fueling everyone's entertainment. I'm literally financing my own public humiliation. That's efficiency, Riley. That's innovation. I should put it on my LinkedIn. Dude, maybe you should talk to Lydia. Talk? I laughed, and it came out wrong, too high-pitched and sharp, like glass breaking. Oh sure, let me just walk over there and interrupt her revenue stream. She's probably making more tonight than I paid her for our anniversary. Maybe I should start tucking dollar bills in her dress too. Join the club. Make it a group activity. People were definitely staring now, trying to pretend they weren't listening while obviously listening to every word. My Aunt Carol had her hand over her mouth like she was watching a car accident. Jenkins from the office had lowered his phone but was still recording, because apparently even my breakdown needed to be documented for posterity. Monica, Lydia's friend who'd started this whole mess by pulling her onto the dance floor, looked like she wanted to melt into the floor and disappear. Lydia was making her way toward me, weaving through the crowd with that look on her face that I'd seen 1,000 times before. I can explain. Look, it's not what it looks like. Look, please don't be mad. Look that women perfect sometime around age 16 and use for the rest of their lives whenever they know they've messed up. Her dress was still full of dollar bills, which would have been hilarious if it wasn't also soul-destroying. She looked like a broken slot machine, if slot machines wore designer dresses and had terrible judgment. But I didn't wait for her explanation. Didn't stand there and let her try to smooth this over with words and tears and promises that it didn't mean anything. Because here's the thing they don't tell you about betrayal. It doesn't matter if it meant something or not. What matters is that it happened. What matters is that she let it happen. What matters is that 50 people watched it happen and most of them thought it was hilarious. So I did the only thing that made sense in that moment. I set my whiskey glass down on the nearest table, gave Riley a pat on the shoulder, and walked toward the exit. Not stormed. Not ran. Just walked, calm and steady, like I was leaving any normal party at any normal time for any normal reason. One foot in front of the other, past the silent band, past my coworkers with their phones still out, past the catering table with my expensive birthday cake that nobody had even cut yet, past the decorations I'd approved and the guest list I'd spent weeks perfecting. "Grayson!" Lydia called after me, her voice cracking. "Grayson, wait!" I didn't wait. Didn't even turn around. Just kept walking, my footsteps echoing on the wooden deck, heading toward the elevator that would take me down and away from this nightmare. Behind me, I could hear people starting to murmur, that low buzz of conversation that happens when something genuinely uncomfortable goes down, and nobody knows what to do about it. "Should someone go after him?" I heard someone ask. "Give him space," Riley said, and God bless him for that. "Just give him space." The elevator doors opened with a cheerful ding that felt wildly inappropriate for the moment. I stepped inside, turned around, and got one last look at my birthday party, at the confused guests, at the band awkwardly holding their instruments, at Lydia standing in the middle of the dance floor with her hand outstretched like she was trying to grab me from 40 feet away, at Trent Monroe finally looking slightly less confident, and slightly more like someone who'd just realized he'd kicked a beehive. The doors started to close, and I saw Riley mouth something that looked like, "Call me," but I just gave him a small nod. My last view before the elevator sealed me away was of the crowd starting to disperse, the party atmosphere officially dead and buried, people gathering their coats and bags and making excuses about early mornings and babysitters. They thought I'd storm off like a jealous husband, make a scene, give them something to talk about. But no, I'm too calm for that, too calculated. I just nodded, gave a polite smile, and walked out like I was leaving a business meeting that had run overtime. People stopped laughing real quick when they saw I wasn't coming back. Because deep down, underneath all their phones and their gossip and their schadenfreude, they knew something important: the quiet guy is always the problem. The guy who doesn't yell? That's the guy who plans. That's the guy who waits. That's the guy who wins. And I was just getting started. The thing about driving through Chicago at night when your life has just imploded is that the city doesn't care. The lights keep blurring past, red and white streaks on the highway like someone dragged a paintbrush across reality. Traffic keeps flowing, people keep living their lives, the whole world just keeps spinning like you didn't just experience a Category 5 emotional hurricane on a rooftop in front of everyone who's supposed to respect you. It's almost philosophical, in a really depressing way, like the universe is reminding you that your personal drama is cosmically insignificant, and maybe you should get over yourself. Thanks, universe. Real comforting. A+ motivational speaking. I drove in complete silence, which is unusual for me because I'm normally one of those people who needs noise, podcasts, music, talk radio, anything to fill the void. But tonight silence felt right. Felt appropriate. Like the only honest thing in a world full of fake laughs and faker people. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white, and some distant part of my brain registered that I was probably driving too fast, weaving through lanes like I was in a Fast and Furious movie except without the cool cars or the family that's apparently more important than anything. My phone started buzzing around the time I hit Lakeshore Drive. First just once, then twice, then it basically turned into a vibrator having a seizure in my cup holder. I didn't look at it. Didn't need to. I knew exactly who was blowing up my phone with messages that would range from apologetic to defensive to confused, probably in that exact order. It's funny how predictable people become when they know they've screwed up. They all follow the same script: deny, deflect, minimize, then finally maybe, admit they were wrong, but only after they've exhausted every other option. Buzz. Buzz. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The phone was practically having a meltdown, which made two of us. I focused on the road, on the rhythm of streetlights passing overhead, on breathing like a normal human being instead of someone who was currently running about 8 different disaster scenarios through his head. The lake stretched out to my right, dark and endless, and I had this weird intrusive thought about just driving straight into it, car and all, like some kind of dramatic movie ending. But that would be giving everyone exactly what they wanted, A story. Did you hear about Grayson Ward? Totally lost it after his wife got dollar bills stuffed in her dress. Drove into Lake Michigan. So sad. Anyway, what are we having for lunch? Nope. Not happening. I've never been the dramatic exit type, and I wasn't about to start now just because my wife decided to audition for Magic Mike at my birthday party. I made it home in about 20 minutes, which meant I'd definitely been speeding, but whatever, add it to the list of tonight's problems. My house, because suddenly I was feeling very possessive of things with my name on the deed, sat at the end of a quiet street in Lincoln Park, one of those renovated brownstones that real estate agents describe as charming and historic, which is code for we fixed the foundation issues, but you're still going to hear weird noises at night. I designed the renovation myself 3 years ago, back when Lydia and I were in that honeymoon phase where we actually liked each other and made decisions together like functional adults. Now it just felt like a museum to a marriage that had apparently been a joke the whole time. I parked in the driveway, didn't even bother with the garage, and sat there for a minute, engine off, just staring at the house like it might give me answers. It didn't. Houses don't do that, despite what HGTV wants you to believe. My phone was still having its meltdown in the cup holder, the screen lighting up every few seconds with new notifications. Finally, against my better judgment, I picked it up. 17 missed calls. 33 text messages. 2 voicemails. And it had only been 25 minutes since I left the party. Impressive, really? That's dedication to the cause of making me feel guilty for leaving my own humiliation party early. Lydia had sent about 15 of those messages, each one progressively more frantic. Where did you go? Grayson, please answer. It was just a joke. Everyone's asking where you are. You're embarrassing me. Can we please talk about this like adults? That last one almost made me laugh. Like adults. Sure, Lydia. Because adults definitely let random protein powder salesmen stuff money in their clothes while their husbands watch. That's peak maturity right there. Should probably write a self-help book about it. Riley had sent a few too, much more reasonable. You good, bro? And call me when you're ready. And I got your back. That's why Riley's my best friend. He knows when to push and when to just exist in the background until you're ready to deal with humanity again. But the real kicker, the cherry on top of this disaster Sunday, was the message from Trent Monroe himself. And yes, I know what you're thinking. How did he even have my number? Excellent question. Turns out we're in the same LinkedIn group for Chicago entrepreneurs, and he'd sent me a connection request months ago that I'd accepted because I accept everyone and don't actually pay attention to who's in my network. My first mistake. My second mistake was not blocking him immediately after meeting him, because anyone who introduces himself by talking about his personal brand and his disruption strategy is automatically a problem. His message read, Hey man, no hard feelings, right? Just having fun. Your wife's cool as hell. You're lucky. The audacity. The sheer, unfiltered, weapons-grade audacity of this human dumpster fire. I stared at that message for a solid 30 seconds, reading it over and over, letting each word sink in like poison. No hard feelings. Just having fun. Your wife's cool. You're lucky. I typed out my response with the kind of calm precision you only achieve when you're so angry that you've looped back around to serene. So was our marriage, apparently. Sent it to Lydia, not Trent, because Trent would get his response in a different way. A better way. A way that would make him wish he'd stayed home tonight and posted his protein powder testimonials to his 17 Instagram followers instead of deciding to make an enemy out of someone who could ruin his life before breakfast. I got out of the car, went inside, and started packing. Not everything. I'm not dramatic enough for the full-scale evacuation, just enough for a few days. Clothes, toiletries, my laptop, the chargers for various devices that apparently run my life now. I moved through the house like a ghost, not really seeing it, just going through motions that felt automatic. This was our bedroom, with the king-size bed we'd picked out together at some overpriced furniture store. This was the closet where her clothes took up 70% of the space and mine were crammed into the corner like an afterthought. This was the bathroom where she kept about 47 different beauty products that all claimed to do the same thing but apparently required individual purchase. I grabbed my laptop bag from the office, the one room in the house that was entirely mine, that Lydia had never bothered to decorate because she said it was too boring and needed color. It was perfect. Dark wood desk, leather chair, walls lined with architectural drawings and photos from projects I'd completed over the years. Buildings I'd designed. Spaces I'd created. Proof that I was more than just some guy who could be publicly humiliated without consequence. Because here's what Trent Monroe didn't know. Here's what most people didn't know, actually, because I don't go around announcing it like I'm some kind of tech bro at a networking event. I'm not just a designer. Not just some random construction guy with a house in the suburbs and a wife who apparently moonlights as entertainment. I'm the architect and silent investor in half the commercial real estate in this city. That rooftop restaurant where my marriage died tonight. I own 60% of it. The building it sits on top of? Designed it. The 3 other locations in the chain? Mine. Every chair Trent sat on, every drink he bought from the bar, every square inch of that space where he decided to publicly humiliate me, I paid for it. I've got layers. Dangerous layers. The kind that come from building an empire quietly while everyone else is busy posting about their grind on social media. I learned a long time ago that the people who talk the most about their success are usually the ones who have the least of it. Real power is quiet. Real money doesn't need to announce itself. And real revenge? Real revenge doesn't happen in the moment. It happens slowly, deliberately, with surgical precision. I zipped up my bag, took one last look around the house, and left again. Not out of anger this time, but purpose. Cold, calculated purpose. My phone buzzed again, probably Lydia calling for the 20th time, but I ignored it. She'd have to sit with her choices for a while. Sit with the silence. Sit with the same feeling she'd given me when she laughed at another man's touch. As I drove away, heading to Riley's place because I knew he'd let me crash without asking too many questions, I couldn't help but smile. Not the fake smile from earlier, but something real. Something that came from knowing what was about to happen. Trent Monroe had just humiliated the wrong guy. And he was about to find out exactly who Grayson Ward really was. Game on, buddy. Game on. Riley's apartment is exactly what you'd expect from a 37-year-old bachelor who makes good money but refuses to grow up, expensive furniture that doesn't match, a PlayStation that gets more use than his kitchen, and a fridge containing beer, leftover pizza, and what might have been vegetables at some point in their past life. He opened the door at midnight looking like he'd thrown on the first clothes he could find, which he probably had, and took one look at my face before stepping aside without a word. That's friendship right there, knowing when someone needs silence more than they need a pep talk. Guest room's ready, he said, gesturing down the hall. Clean sheets, towels in the closet. Mi casa y su casa, bro. Except don't touch my gaming setup or we're gonna have problems. I dropped my bag in the guest room, which was actually pretty nice considering Riley's general approach to adulting. The bed was made, there were actual pillows instead of the couch cushions I'd been expecting, and it didn't smell like a fraternity house, which already put it ahead of his last apartment. I could hear him in the kitchen, the sound of bottles clinking and cabinets opening, doing that thing guys do when they don't know what to say so they just make noise and hope it helps. I walked back out to find him holding 2 beers, standing in his living room like he was waiting for permission to speak. Riley's known me long enough to understand that I process things internally first, that I need to sit with emotions for a while before I'm ready to talk about them. Most people can't handle that. They want immediate reactions, instant processing, emotional availability on demand like you're a vending machine that dispenses feelings. But Riley gets it. He's seen me through enough disasters to know that the quiet phase is temporary, and what comes after is usually either brilliant or terrifying, sometimes both. Want to talk about it? He asked, handing me a beer. Not particularly, I said, twisting off the cap and taking a long drink. It was some craft IPA that probably cost $8 and tasted like someone melted pine trees into liquid form, but it was cold and alcoholic, so it served its purpose. Cool, cool. We can just sit here in masculine silence and pretend we're emotionally healthy. He flopped onto his couch, which was one of those oversized sectionals that could seat 12 people but mostly just collected his laundry. Or we could watch people yell at each other on reality TV. I've got 3 different Housewives franchises recorded. I actually smiled at that. You watch Real Housewives? Ironically, he said defensively. It's anthropology. Studying human behavior in its natural habitat. Very educational. Sure it is. We sat there for a few minutes, drinking our pretentious beer and not watching the TV he'd turned on for background noise. Some late-night talk show was on, the host making jokes about politicians that probably would have been funny if my brain wasn't currently occupied with planning 17 different revenge scenarios. Riley kept shooting me glances, clearly dying to say something but holding back, which I appreciated even though I knew the dam was about to break. Finally, he cracked. Come on, Gray, he said, turning to face me with that concerned friend look that people practice in mirrors. Maybe he's just an idiot. Like, a genuine, certified, medical-grade idiot. Not everyone's playing 3-dimensional chess. Some people are just dumb. Then it's going to be a short investigation, I said, and even I could hear the edge in my voice sharp enough to cut glass. Riley raised his eyebrows. Investigation? Bro, what are you planning? Please tell me you're not going to do anything that requires me to post bail. Nothing illegal, I assured him, which was technically true. Everything I was planning existed in that beautiful gray area where it's perfectly legal but absolutely devastating. Just a little fact-finding mission. Due diligence. You know, standard business practices. Standard business practices? Riley repeated slowly. Why do I feel like that's code for something that's going to end up as a true crime podcast? I took another drink, letting the moment stretch out, enjoying the way Riley was simultaneously curious and terrified. You know what Trent doesn't know about me? I said finally. That you're secretly Batman? Close. I'm the architect and silent investor in that entire chain of rooftop restaurants he loves bragging about partying in. Riley blinked. Then blinked again. Then sat up straighter, his beer forgotten. Wait, what? The Skyline Group? That's you? 60% of tonight's venue specifically. 40% of the others. I stay silent because it's better for business. People pay premium prices when they don't know the owner's watching. But I own the spaces, Riley. I designed them. Every beam, every layout, every square foot of that rooftop where that clown decided to make a show out of my marriage. Holy shit. Riley breathed. Does Lydia know? She knows I have investments. She doesn't pay attention to the details because, and I quote, business stuff is boring. Apparently dollar bill dancing is more her speed. Riley let out a low whistle, the kind you make when you realize you've just witnessed the beginning of something spectacular and possibly catastrophic. So what are you going to do? I smiled, and it must have been a good smile because Riley actually leaned back a little. I'm going to remind Mr. Monroe that there are levels to this game, and he just challenged someone playing a sport he doesn't even know exists. That's terrifyingly vague. It's meant to be. I pulled out my phone, finally ready to deal with the digital avalanche that had been building all night. Lydia had sent about 30 more messages, each one a variation of panic and justification. My coworkers had started a group chat that I immediately muted. My Aunt Carol had somehow gotten involved, which meant my entire family would know about this by morning. But I ignored all of that and scrolled through my contacts until I found the name I needed, Daphne Stone. Daphne's been my lawyer for 6 years, ever since I needed someone to handle a complicated real estate merger that involved 3 different holding companies and enough legal paperwork to kill a small forest. She came highly recommended by another investor who described her as an angel with a flamethrower, which turned out to be the most accurate character assessment I'd ever heard. She looks like she should be running a charity gala in pearls and sensible heels, all grace and southern charm. But put her in a courtroom or a negotiation and she turns into something that would make a honey badger look cuddly. She smiles like an angel but files lawsuits like a demon, and she's never lost a case I've hired her for. It was almost 1 a.m, which would have been too late to call any normal lawyer, but Daphne isn't normal. She's one of those people who sleeps 4 hours a night and considers it excessive. I'd gotten emails from her at 3 a.m, voice messages at dawn, text messages during what should have been family dinners. The woman runs on coffee, ambition, and what I suspect is a deep-seated need to destroy anyone who crosses her clients. I called. She picked up on the second ring. Grayson Ward. Her voice came through crisp and alert, no hint of sleep despite the hour. This is either very good news or wonderfully terrible news. I'm hoping for the latter because I've had a boring week. Daphne, I said, and I could hear Riley lean forward, clearly not even pretending not to eavesdrop anymore. I need you to pull the operational files on Skyline Venue North, the rooftop location. Specifically, I need rental agreements, insurance policies, and any documentation we have on event liability clauses. There was a pause, the sound of papers rustling in the background, a keyboard clicking. That's the Lincoln Park location, correct? The one that hosted your birthday party tonight? The very same. And I'm assuming something interesting happened at this party that requires legal documentation at. Another pause. 12:47 a.m. on a Sunday morning? Let's just say one of the guests decided to test the boundaries of acceptable behavior, and I'm feeling inspired to review our policies on guest conduct and venue access. I could practically hear her smile through the phone. Guest conduct violations. How deliciously vague. Should I be preparing anything else? Partnership dissolution papers? Restraining orders? A strongly worded letter that makes someone reconsider their life choices? Just the venue files for now. I'll brief you properly on Monday morning. 9 a.m. your office? Make it 8:30. I'll have coffee and a preliminary strategy ready. This is going to be fun, isn't it? Daphne, you have no idea. Those are my favorite kind of cases. See you Monday, Grayson. And for what it's worth, whoever decided to mess with you tonight picked the wrong target. We hung up, and I sat back feeling something I hadn't felt since leaving that party: control. Not the fake control you pretend to have when everything's falling apart, but real control. The kind that comes from having resources, connections, and a lawyer who treats destruction like an art form. Riley was staring at me like I'd just revealed I was a superhero. Bro, he said slowly, you're actually going to destroy this guy, aren't you? I'm going to educate him, I corrected. There's a difference. Is there, though? I finished my beer and stood up, suddenly exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with the hour and everything to do with the emotional roller coaster I'd been riding since Trent pulled out his first dollar bill. I'm going to bed. Thanks for letting me crash here. Anytime, man. Seriously. Riley stood too, looking like he wanted to say something profound but couldn't find the words. For what it's worth, what happened tonight was messed up. You didn't deserve that. No, I agreed. I didn't. I didn't raise my voice. I raised stakes. I woke up on Riley's guest bed at 7:30 in the morning feeling like I'd been hit by a truck made of regret and cheap beer. My head was pounding with that special kind of hangover that comes from mixing alcohol with emotional trauma, and my mouth tasted like something had died in it and then been reanimated just to die again. The morning sun was streaming through the blinds that Riley had probably installed wrong because they were letting in way too much light for someone who desperately needed darkness and silence, and maybe a time machine to go back and unlive the previous night. I lay there for a minute, staring at the ceiling, hoping that maybe the whole thing had been a nightmare. Maybe I'd fallen asleep at my desk and dreamed up this entire catastrophe. Maybe I'd wake up and it would still be Friday, and I could cancel the whole party and just spend my birthday doing something safe and humiliation-free, like getting a root canal or filing taxes. But no, my phone was on the nightstand, glowing with approximately 400 notifications, which meant it was all very real and very much my current life. I grabbed the phone and immediately regretted it. The messages had multiplied overnight like rabbits on fertility drugs. Lydia had sent about 50 more texts, progressing through what I can only describe as the 5 stages of, "Oh God, my husband left his own birthday party because I let a protein powder salesman turn me into a human ATM." There was denial. "You're overreacting." Anger. "You embarrassed me by leaving." Bargaining. "Can we please just talk?" Depression. "I can't believe this is happening." And finally something resembling acceptance. "I messed up. I know I messed up. Please come home." My family group chat was on fire, which never happens unless someone died or got engaged or did something spectacularly stupid in public. Aunt Carol had apparently appointed herself as the family spokesperson and was demanding to know what happened at that party, and why is everyone talking about Lydia on Facebook, and did you really just abandon your wife? My mom, bless her heart, was trying to be diplomatic, but you could tell she was dying to know the gossip. My brother sent a single message. "Do WTF happened? Call me." But it was Riley's apartment, and I could smell coffee brewing, which meant he was already up and probably preparing to play therapist. I dragged myself out of bed, caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, looking exactly as rough as I felt, and shuffled out to the kitchen in the same clothes I'd slept in because I hadn't packed pajamas. Priorities had been elsewhere. Riley was standing at his fancy espresso machine that he'd bought during a self-improvement phase, and used maybe twice a month, looking surprisingly awake for someone who'd probably gotten the same amount of sleep as me. He glanced up when I walked in and immediately poured me a cup without asking if I wanted any, which is true friendship right there. "You look like death," he said cheerfully. "But like fashionable death. Death that has good bone structure." "Thanks. I feel like fashionable death too." I took the coffee and drank it black because I needed the punishment. It burned going down and tasted like bitter reality, which was appropriate. "So," Riley started, leaning against the counter with his own mug. "Funny story. Your wife is downstairs." I nearly spit out my coffee. "What?" "Yeah, she showed up about 10 minutes ago. Still wearing last night's dress, mascara everywhere, looking like the walk of shame personified. She's been buzzing the intercom asking to see you. I told her you were asleep, but she said she'd wait." He paused. "She's been sitting on the front steps for the last 20 minutes. Mrs. Henderson from 3B walked past her and asked if she needed help, thought she was homeless." Jesus Christ. Yeah, it's pretty dramatic. Very soap opera. I'm kind of into it, honestly. Should I tell her you're awake, or are we pretending you died in your sleep? I considered this for a solid 10 seconds, weighing the pros and cons of facing my wife versus faking my own death and starting a new life in Montana. Montana seemed appealing. No people, lots of space, probably nobody there selling protein powder or stuffing money into married women's clothing. But I'm not a coward, despite what my current situation might suggest, so I sighed and said, "Tell her to come up. Might as well get this over with." Riley raised his eyebrows. "You sure? Because you look like you're about to either cry or commit murder, and I really don't want to have to testify at a trial." "I'm sure. Just give me 5 minutes to look slightly less like a zombie." I went back to the guest room, splashed cold water on my face, tried to make my hair look like something other than a bird's nest that had been through a hurricane, and changed into the clean shirt I'd packed. When I looked in the mirror again, I still looked tired, but at least I looked like a functional human being instead of someone who'd been dragged behind a car. Good enough. By the time I came back out, Lydia was standing in Riley's living room looking absolutely wrecked. And I mean wrecked in a way that would have made me feel sorry for her if I wasn't currently made of ice and passive-aggressive rage. Her emerald green dress, the one that had looked stunning last night, was wrinkled and had suspicious stains that were probably from sitting on Riley's dirty front steps. Her hair was a mess, half falling out of whatever style she'd had it in, and her makeup had clearly been crying-proof tested and failed spectacularly. Black mascara streaks ran down her face like war paint applied by someone having a breakdown. She looked like she'd had the worst night of her life, which gave me a small, petty sense of satisfaction that I'm not proud of but absolutely felt anyway. Riley had made himself scarce, probably hiding in his bedroom so he could eavesdrop without seeming like he was eavesdropping. Smart man. Grayson. Lydia started, her voice hoarse like she'd been crying all night, which she probably had. Coffee? I interrupted, holding up my mug like we were having a casual Sunday morning chat and not the conversation that would determine whether my marriage survived past breakfast. She blinked, clearly thrown by my calm demeanor. What? Coffee. Do you want coffee? It's a simple question. I walked past her to the kitchen, forcing her to follow me, establishing that I was in control of this conversation. Power moves. I'd learned them in boardrooms, and they work just as well in personal disasters. Yes, okay, coffee. She followed me like a lost puppy, which would have been pathetic if it wasn't also exactly what she deserved. I poured her a cup, handed it to her without any cream or sugar even though I knew she liked both, and leaned against the counter with my own mug. So, I said conversationally, like we were discussing the weather. Hell of a party last night. It was just a stupid dare, she blurted out, the words tumbling over each other in their rush to escape. Monica dared me to dance with him, and then he just started doing that thing with the money and everyone was laughing and I didn't know how to stop it without making a scene. A scene, I repeated flatly. You were worried about making a scene. As opposed to the not at all scene-like situation of having another man stuff dollar bills down your dress in front of 50 people including your husband? I know how it looked. Do you? I took a sip of coffee, keeping my voice level, almost bored. Because from where I was standing, it looked like my wife was enjoying herself while some jackass with a protein powder addiction turned her into a charity case. It looked like everyone at my birthday party thought it was hilarious. It looked like I was the punchline to a joke I didn't even know was being told. Her face crumpled, fresh tears starting to flow, and part of me, a very small, very distant part, wanted to comfort her. But the rest of me was still too angry, too hurt, too aware that she'd chosen to laugh instead of stopping it. Nothing happened, she said desperately. I swear to God, Grayson, nothing happened with him. It was just dancing. Just stupid, meaningless dancing. I believed her. Partly because I knew Lydia, knew she wasn't the cheating type, knew she was more careless than malicious. But also partly because it didn't matter. That was the thing everyone seemed to be missing. The question wasn't whether she'd slept with him or kissed him, or even particularly liked him. The question was about respect. About boundaries. About the fact that she'd let someone disrespect our marriage in public and hadn't seen a problem with it until I walked out. I believe you, I said, and I watched relief flood her face. But that's not the point, Lydia. The relief evaporated. Then what is the point? The point is that you let it happen. The point is that when everyone was laughing, you were laughing too. The point is that my wife, my partner, the person who's supposed to have my back, became entertainment for a crowd at my own birthday party, and you didn't think there was anything wrong with that until I left. I wasn't thinking. Exactly. I set my coffee down harder than necessary, the mug clinking against the counter. You weren't thinking. About me, about us, about what that looked like. You were thinking about having fun, about being the center of attention, about whatever validation you were getting from Mr. Protein Shake and his dollar bills. She was full-on crying now, those ugly sobs that make your whole body shake. I'm sorry, she choked out. I'm so sorry, Grayson. It was stupid and I hate myself and I'll never. Do you know what I do for a living, Lydia? I asked, cutting off her apology because I wasn't ready to hear it yet. I mean, really do. Not just the architecture stuff. She looked confused, wiping at her face with the back of her hand. You design buildings? You have investments? I design buildings, yes. But more importantly, I invest in them. I build them. I own them. I let that sink in for a second. That restaurant last night? I own 60% of it. The building it's in? I designed it. Every rooftop venue in that chain? Mine. At least partially. Her eyes went wide. You what? Reputation is currency in my line of work, Lydia. When someone dips money into your wife's clothes and everyone laughs, that's not just marriage trouble. That's reputation trouble. That's every colleague at that party wondering if I'm a pushover. That's every business partner questioning whether I command respect. That's my professional credibility taking a hit because my personal life became a circus. I didn't know. And that's the problem. You didn't know because you never asked? You know I have investments, but you don't care about the details because business stuff is boring. You love the house, the lifestyle, the designer dresses, but you never wondered how it all actually works. She stood there, coffee untouched, looking like I'd slapped her. And maybe I had, verbally, but sometimes truth hits harder than any physical blow. What do you want me to do? She whispered. How do I fix this? I picked up my coffee again, taking a long drink while I considered the question. I don't know yet, I said honestly. But I know that it was just a dare isn't good enough. And I'm sorry isn't going to cut it. Not yet. The silence stretched between us like the Grand Canyon, wide and deep and full of things we weren't saying. And baby, I'm loaded with a lot more than just money. I'm loaded with patience, with plans, and with a very clear understanding of what happens next. 3 days. That's how long it took for Trent Monroe to gift wrap his own destruction and hand it to me with a bow. I spent those 72 hours doing what I do best, planning, researching, and making phone calls to people who owe me favors. Daphne and I had our Monday morning meeting, which turned into a 3-hour strategy session that felt more like plotting a heist than discussing business operations. She pulled files, found loopholes, and occasionally laughed in that way that makes opposing counsel nervous. By the time we were done, I had a folder thick enough to use as a weapon and a plan that would make Sun Tzu proud. Lydia had gone back to our house after that disastrous coffee conversation at Riley's place. We weren't exactly talking, more like existing in the same general universe while maintaining emotional distance. She'd text me updates like, I'm sleeping in the guest room. And, I told Monica we're not friends anymore. Like that somehow made up for turning my birthday into a viral humiliation. I responded with one-word answers because I'm petty like that, and also because I was busy. Busy watching Trent Monroe dig his own grave deeper with every social media post, every tagged photo, every smug comment about living his best life, and making power moves. Then Tuesday afternoon, my assistant forwarded me an interesting email, a rental request for Skyline Venue West, our Gold Coast location. The event was described as a business mixer and networking celebration for, wait for it, Trent Monroe's supplement company, whatever the hell it was called this week. Apparently Mr. Dollar Bills was feeling so good about himself after his performance at my party that he decided to throw his own shindig at what he thought was just some random upscale venue. The irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. The rental request went through our normal channels, got approved by our events manager who had no idea about my personal vendetta, and just like that, Trent Monroe had rented my property to celebrate being the world's biggest tool. The universe, despite usually being indifferent to human suffering, occasionally delivers comedy gold. I didn't cancel his reservation. Didn't block it. Didn't give any indication that I was aware or cared or planning anything at all. I just marked it in my calendar, smiled, and started planning my entrance like I was Bruce Wayne about to crash a party as Batman, except instead of a cape I had lawyers and instead of fighting crime I was fighting disrespect with economic warfare. Thursday evening rolled around, and I found myself standing in my closet at 7 p.m., looking at the same suit I'd worn to my birthday party. Navy blue, tailored perfectly, the one that made me look like I belonged in a boardroom or a whiskey commercial. Lydia had picked it out last year, back when we did things like shop together and pretend we enjoyed it. I put it on slowly, deliberately, like armor. Same suit, same tie, same shoes. If I was going to deliver poetic justice, I was going to do it with style and symmetry. Riley called while I was getting ready. Bro, are you sure about this? Because this feels like the kind of thing that either goes incredibly right or incredibly wrong with no middle ground. I'm aware, I said, adjusting my tie in the mirror. That's what makes it fun. Fun. Right. That's definitely the word I'd use for potential public confrontation at a business event. He paused. You want backup? I can wear my fancy suit. The one that makes me look like I have my life together. I appreciate it, but this is a solo mission. Some things you have to do yourself. Okay, but if you end up on the news, I'm telling everyone I tried to stop you. Fair enough. I drove to the Gold Coast venue, which sits on top of a building I designed 4 years ago. 23 stories of steel and glass, with the restaurant occupying the entire top floor, panoramic views, retractable roof, the kind of space that makes people feel rich and important even when they're either. I'd poured my heart into that design, fought with contractors and city planners and budget limitations to make it perfect. It was mine in a way that went beyond just ownership. Every beam, every window, every sight line had my fingerprints on it. The party was already in full swing when I arrived at 8:30. I could hear the music from the elevator, some generic EDM that all sounds the same, the kind of music people who don't actually like music play at parties because it's good vibes. The doors opened, and I stepped into chaos. The place was packed, maybe 80 people, all dressed in that business casual way that screams, I'm trying to network but also get drunk. I recognized a few faces from the supplement world, some Instagram influencers with more followers than brain cells, and of course, standing in the center of it all like a king holding court, Trent Monroe himself. He was wearing a white suit. An actual white suit like he was Tony Montana or a game show host from the 70s. He had a drink in one hand and his phone in the other, probably taking selfies to prove to the internet that he was important. A small crowd surrounded him, laughing at his jokes that probably weren't funny, nodding at his business advice that was probably terrible, generally acting like he was Elon Musk instead of a guy who sold overpriced powdered supplements to people who'd believe anything. I walked in slowly, hands in my pockets, looking around like I owned the place. Which I did. Literally. The music was loud enough that nobody noticed me at first, just another guy in a suit at a networking event. But then someone recognized me, Jenkins from my office, who was apparently here for God knows what reason, and his eyes went wide. He elbowed the person next to him, who turned and looked, and then that person told someone else, and it spread through the room like a virus. That awareness that something was about to happen. The music kept playing but conversation started dying out, people turning to look at me with expressions ranging from confused to horrified to excited like they just realized they had front row seats to a disaster. Trent was still oblivious, mid-sentence about disrupting the wellness industry, or whatever nonsense he was spewing, until someone tapped his shoulder and pointed in my direction. He froze. Actually, legitimately froze like someone had hit pause on a video. His smile locked in place, his drink halfway to his mouth, his entire body going rigid as his brain tried to process what his eyes were seeing. I could practically see the wheels turning in his head. Why is Grayson Ward here? How did he know about this party? Why is he wearing that same suit? Is this about to be bad for me? Yes, Trent. Yes, it is. The music finally stopped. Someone had the sense to cut it, and the room went completely silent. 80 people holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. I took my time walking through the crowd, which parted for me like I was Moses and they were the Red Sea, nobody wanting to be too close to whatever was about to go down. Lydia was there too, I noticed with some surprise. Standing near the back with a group of women, looking like she wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole. She'd mentioned something about networking events this week but hadn't specified which ones. Probably hoping to avoid running into Trent again, and instead she got to watch her husband crash his party like the Kool-Aid man of revenge. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice carrying across the silent room even without a microphone. Welcome to my property. I hope the drinks are strong and the shame is stronger. Trent's face went from confused to pale in about 2 seconds flat. Your what? My property, I repeated, gesturing around the room with one hand. Skyline Venue West. I own it. Well, 70% of it, to be precise. I designed the building it's in. I approved your rental request. I could have cancelled it, but where's the fun in that? Someone in the crowd whispered, "Oh shit." Loud enough for everyone to hear. A few people had their phones out, already recording because of course they were. This generation documents everything like they're all war correspondents instead of drunk people at parties. I walked over to where the DJ had set up his equipment and picked up the microphone, which he handed over without protest because he could read the room. "I wanted to thank you all for coming tonight," I said into the mic, my voice now amplified and impossible to ignore. "Especially you, Trent. Really appreciate you choosing one of my venues for your little celebration here." Trent looked like he was doing mental math, trying to figure out if there was any way this could end well for him. There wasn't. "Grayson, look man, I didn't know." "Oh, I'm aware you didn't know. That's kind of the point." I pulled out my phone with my free hand, pulling up the file Daphne had prepared. "See, here's the thing about owning venues. We have security cameras. Lots of them. For safety, insurance purposes, you know how it goes. And those cameras record everything." I could see Trent starting to sweat despite the air conditioning. "What are you?" "I'm glad you asked." I gestured to my assistant manager, who I'd texted earlier and who was waiting by the AV system. She nodded and pulled up the file I'd sent her onto the venue's massive projection screen, the one we usually use for corporate presentations and wedding slideshows. The footage started playing. Crystal clear, professionally shot security camera footage from my birthday party 4 days ago. The timestamp in the corner. The crowd gathering. And there, in perfect high-definition detail, Trent Monroe stuffing dollar bills down my wife's dress while everyone laughed and filmed and generally acted like civilization was optional. The room went from silent to dead silent. The kind of silence you could hear someone's soul leaving their body. On screen, past Trent shouted, "Your husband can disappear, I own you tonight," and pointed directly at past me standing in the background with that frozen smile. Present Trent looked like he wanted to disappear into his white suit and never emerge. I woke up Friday morning to discover that I'd accidentally become an internet sensation, which wasn't on my bingo card for this year, but here we are. My phone was absolutely melting down with notifications, texts, emails, social media tags, news alerts, and even a few interview requests from local media outlets who apparently thought my public takedown of Trent Monroe was newsworthy content. I lay in bed at Riley's place scrolling through the chaos, drinking my coffee, and occasionally laughing out loud at the sheer absurdity of how fast the internet can turn someone into a meme. #$Trent was trending nationally. Nationally. As in, people in California who never heard of either of us were now intimately familiar with Trent Monroe's spectacular downfall. Someone had edited together the security footage from my birthday party with the footage from last night's confrontation, added dramatic music that sounded like it came from a true crime documentary, and posted it everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it now, YouTube, even LinkedIn, which meant Trent's professional reputation was being barbecued on the platform where people are supposed to be professional. The video had something like 2 million views and climbing, with comments ranging from supportive, "This man is a king for standing up for himself," to absolutely savage, "Trent Monroe looks like someone ordered Ryan Gosling from Wish." But my personal favorite was the meme someone created. A split-screen image of Trent at my birthday party with the caption, "I own you tonight," and then Trent at his own party looking like a ghost with the caption, "I own nothing actually." Simple, elegant, devastating. That's the internet for you. It'll roast you medium rare and serve you with a side of public humiliation. Riley walked into the guest room without knocking, which was rude, but also we're past the point of privacy, I guess, holding his phone up like he just discovered alien life. "Bro, you're viral. Like, actually viral. My mom sent me the video." My mom! She never sends me anything except Facebook chain letters about taxes and Jesus. I saw," I said, still scrolling. Apparently I'm either a hero standing up to toxic masculinity or a vindictive psychopath who abused his power, depending on which corner of the internet you're hanging out in. The vindictive psychopath people are just jealous they don't own buildings, Riley said, flopping onto the bed like we were teenagers at a sleepover. Everyone with actual power is on your side. I've seen at least 15 think pieces about accountability and consequences. You're basically a folk hero for married men everywhere. Great, I'll put that on my resume. Grayson Ward, architect, investor, folk hero for emotionally damaged husbands. My phone rang, an actual phone call, which nobody does anymore unless it's serious or they're over 60. It was my business partner Greg, calling at 8 in the morning, which meant he'd been up for hours because Greg's one of those annoying morning people who think dawn is a reasonable time to be functional. Grayson, he said the second I answered. What the hell did you do last night? Defended my honor. Exercised property rights. Provided entertainment for the masses. Pick your favorite. The Skyline Group's phone has been ringing off the hook since 6 a.m. We've got 3 interview requests, 5 new rental inquiries, and apparently our Instagram followers doubled overnight. People want to book events at the place where that guy got owned. He paused. From a business perspective, this is fantastic. From a friendship perspective, are you okay? That's Greg for you. Always leads with business, follows up with feelings. I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. I feel like I just won the Super Bowl of petty revenge. Good. Because Trent Monroe's lawyer called. I could hear the smile in Greg's voice. They want to discuss resolving this matter privately before it escalates further. Which is lawyer speak for please make this stop, our client is having a breakdown. Forward everything to Daphne, I said. She's handling all Trent-related communications. I'm too busy enjoying my newfound internet fame. Already done. She sounded delighted, by the way. Like, disturbingly delighted. Pretty sure she cackled when I told her about the legal threat. We hung up, and I continued my morning scroll through the apocalypse I'd created. Trent's supplement company, Broforce Elite, which sounds like a rejected G.I. Joe spin-off, had lost 3 major sponsors by dawn. I'm talking 6-figure endorsement deals just evaporating like water on hot asphalt. Their Instagram posted a statement that was basically corporate speak for, "We don't know this man, and please don't associate our protein powder with public humiliation." One company even posted a gif of someone cutting ties with scissors, which was petty and also hilarious. Trent's personal Instagram, which usually got thousands of likes on his shirtless gym selfies and motivational quotes stolen from dead philosophers, was getting absolutely demolished in the comments. Every post, going back months, was filled with dollar bill emojis and comments like, "How's that frozen account treating you? And remember that time you thought humiliating someone's husband was a good idea?" His follower count was dropping in real time. I watched it go from 47,000 to 46,800 in the span of 10 minutes. Death by unfollows. A modern tragedy. But the real kicker came around noon when I got a text from an unknown number. It was a screenshot of a local business article with the headline, "Chicago Entrepreneur's Business License Under Review Following Viral Incident." The article detailed how Trent's various business ventures were being investigated for financial irregularities and potential fraud. Which was definitely Daphne's handiwork, because that woman doesn't just destroy your present, she salts the earth where your future was supposed to grow. The text below the screenshot just said, "You did this." I responded, "No, you did this when you decided my wife was a tip jar. I just pointed it out with receipts." Blocked. Immediately. Which was fine, I'd said what I needed to say. Lydia, meanwhile, had gone completely underground. Social media silent, which for her was like holding her breath underwater. Her Instagram story, which usually updated 17 times a day with coffee cups and outfit selfies and inspirational quotes about being a boss babe, was completely dark. Her Facebook was deactivated. She'd even changed her LinkedIn profile picture to something generic and professional, removing the glamorous headshot that had previously been there. She was hiding from the spotlight like a vampire at noon, and honestly, I couldn't blame her. She'd sent me approximately 60 texts over the past 12 hours, each one more desperate than the last. I'm so sorry. I deleted all my social media. Monica and I aren't friends anymore. I told everyone this is my fault. I quit the book club. I'm seeing a therapist. Please, can we talk? I'll do anything. I love you. Please don't leave me. That last one hit different. Not because it changed anything, but because it was the first time she'd acknowledged that leaving was actually on the table. That this wasn't just a fight we'd get over after a week of cold shoulders and make-up sex. This was existential. This was marriage-ending level serious, and she was finally understanding that. I didn't respond to most of them. Just sent one message around 2 p.m. I need time. Stop texting. She responded with, okay. I understand. I love you. I left that one unread because I didn't know what to say. Did I still love her? Probably. Love doesn't just evaporate overnight, even when your wife becomes the centerpiece of the worst moment of your life. But did I like her right now? Did I trust her? Did I want to be married to someone who'd let this happen? Those were harder questions with messy answers. While Lydia was busy deleting her digital footprint and probably crying into wine at 3 in the afternoon, I was making moves. Business moves. The kind that feel good and also make money, which is the best kind of revenge, the kind that pays dividends. I'd been looking into Trent's restaurant investments. Turns out Mr. Entrepreneur had fancy shares in a few establishments around the city, probably bought during one of his "I'm a serious businessman" phases. Small percentages, nothing major, but enough to give him bragging rights at parties about being in the restaurant game. Those shares were purchased through his frozen business account, which meant he was suddenly very motivated to liquidate assets to pay bills. My lawyer, the angel with a flamethrower, had her contacts reach out through appropriate channels with purchase offers. Nothing illegal, nothing shady, just legitimate business transactions for someone who desperately needed liquid capital. By Friday evening, I'd acquired his shares in 3 different restaurants for roughly 60 cents on the dollar. Fair market value, considering his circumstances. Some might call it predatory. I call it capitalism with a side of karma. The best part? One of those restaurants was called Elevate, a trendy gastropub in Wicker Park that Trent had constantly posted about, acting like he was some kind of hospitality mogul. I immediately scheduled a management meeting to discuss rebranding. We were going to rename it The Last Dance, just like I'd done with the Skyline venue. Let that name haunt him across the city. Let him drive past multiple restaurants that reminded him of the night he learned that actions have consequences and consequences have me. By Saturday, Trent Monroe had gone from local entrepreneur and Instagram influencer to cautionary tale and internet punchline in less than 72 hours. His business was in shambles, his sponsors were gone, his social media was a graveyard of mockery, and I now owned pieces of his former empire. The man had been erased from relevance so thoroughly that I almost felt bad for him. Almost. But then I remembered him shouting, "Your husband can disappear, I own you tonight," into a microphone at my birthday party, and the sympathy evaporated faster than his career prospects. Sunday morning, I finally agreed to meet Lydia. Not at home, not at Riley's, but at a coffee shop in neutral territory, one I didn't own, which was harder to find than you'd think. She showed up looking like she hadn't slept in days, wearing sweatpants and a northwestern hoodie, no makeup, hair in a messy bun. This was Lydia at her most vulnerable, stripped of all the Instagram polish and designer armor. We sat across from each other, either of us knowing how to start this conversation. Finally she spoke. "I deserve everything that's happened." I sipped my coffee, waiting. "Monica's not speaking to me. My family is mortified. I can't show my face anywhere without people staring." She laughed, but it came out broken. "I'm the woman from the video. That's my identity now." "Yeah," I said simply. "I know saying sorry isn't enough. I know I can't take it back." She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. But I want to try. If you'll let me. Therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. I want to fix this. And here was the moment. The crossroads. The place where I decided if our marriage was worth salvaging, or if I'd already made up my mind during those silent drives and sleepless nights. We'll try, I said finally. Counseling. Real counseling, not some life coach who'll tell us to communicate better while charging $300 an hour. Relief flooded her face. Really? Really. But Lydia, this is it. One chance. No more dares, no more letting people disrespect us, no more pretending everything's fine when it's not. One chance? She repeated. I'll take it. We sat there in silence, both knowing that even if we rebuilt this marriage, it would never be the same. The old version was dead, buried under dollar bills and viral videos. What came next would be different. Maybe better. Maybe worse. But at least it would be honest. Couples therapy is exactly as uncomfortable as you'd imagine, except worse because there's a stranger taking notes, while you explain why your marriage almost ended over dollar bills and a protein powder salesman. Our therapist, Dr. Patricia Chin, had an office that screamed. I charged $200 an hour. With its leather furniture, abstract art that probably cost more than my first car, and one of those white noise machines that's supposed to make you feel like your problems are confidential but mostly just sounds like you're inside a seashell. Week 1, we sat on opposite ends of her couch like we were strangers on a bus trying not to make eye contact. Dr. Chin looked between us with that practiced neutral expression therapists perfect in grad school and asked the question I'd been dreading. So, what brings you here today? Lydia opened her mouth, closed it, then started crying before she'd even said a word. Great start. Really setting the tone for emotional breakthroughs. I sat there feeling like a jerk for not comforting her but also not feeling like comforting her because we were literally here because she'd let another man turn her into a human tip jar at my birthday party. My wife let someone publicly humiliate me. I said flatly, because someone had to start talking and it wasn't going to be Lydia between sobs. And now the entire internet knows about it because I may have overreacted slightly by destroying his business and making him a viral meme. Dr. Chin didn't even blink. I saw the video. It's been quite popular in my office this week. Several clients have brought it up. She paused. You have very good posture in high-stress situations, Grayson. Thanks, I practice vindictive rage in the mirror. Week 2. After we'd established ground rules and paid another $400 to sit on expensive furniture, Dr. Chin finally asked the question I'd been waiting for. She looked at Lydia and said, Why did you let it happen? Lydia twisted her hands in her lap, staring at them like they held answers. I don't know. It just happened so fast. That's not good enough, I said, and Dr. Chin held up a hand to stop me from continuing. Apparently interrupting isn't therapeutic. Who knew? Lydia, Dr. Chin said gently. Let's try to dig deeper. What were you feeling in that moment? I felt. Lydia's voice cracked. Seen. Is that terrible? God, that's terrible. Grayson was busy with everyone else, being the host, being charming, and Trent was just paying attention to me. Making me feel like I was the most interesting person in the room. There it was. The truth bomb I'd been waiting for, delivered in the worst possible wrapping paper. So you let him stuff money in your dress because he made you feel noticed, I said, and yeah, it came out harsh. Meanwhile, I was busy hosting the party I'd spent 3 weeks planning for myself, wearing the suit you picked out, at the venue I chose specifically because you said you loved the view. I know! Lydia actually shouted, which startled both me and Dr. Chin. I know it was stupid. I know it makes no sense. But you want to know the truth, Grayson? The real truth? You make me feel small sometimes. Not on purpose, not maliciously, but you're just so successful. So important. You design buildings. You own half the city. You're friends with people who matter. And I'm just Lydia, who works in marketing for a company nobody's heard of and whose biggest accomplishment this year was getting our holiday campaign to go semi-viral for like 3 hours. I sat there, completely blindsided. You feel small? You're the most confident person I know. You walk into rooms like you own them. That's an act, you idiot. She was crying again, but angry crying this time. That's me pretending I belong in your world. Do you know what it's like being married to you? Everyone wants to talk to Grayson Ward, the architect, the investor, the guy who makes things happen. And I'm just the wife. The accessory. The plus one who looks good in photos. Dr. Chin was scribbling notes like she was witnessing a breakthrough, which I guess she was. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach with a dictionary of revelations. Why didn't you tell me? I asked quietly. Because it sounds insane. Hey honey, I'm jealous of your success and also I feel invisible isn't exactly dinner conversation. She wiped her face with the tissue Dr. Chin handed her. So when Trent paid attention to me, when he made me feel like I was someone instead of someone's wife, I just let it happen. And I didn't realize how badly I was hurting you until you walked out. Well, congratulations, I said, and I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. Half of Chicago noticed you. Mission accomplished. She flinched like I'd slapped her, and Dr. Chin intervened with some therapeutic phrase about processing emotions constructively. But the damage was done, or maybe the healing had started. It's hard to tell the difference sometimes. Week 3, we talked about rebuilding. Dr. Chin used words like communication, and boundaries, and mutual respect. All the things we should have been doing from the beginning but were too busy pretending everything was fine. We made agreements. Lydia would work on her self-worth issues that apparently went deeper than I'd realized. I would work on actually seeing my wife as a partner instead of just assuming she was happy because she looked good in designer dresses. If I could rebuild skyscrapers after earthquakes, I told Dr. Chin during our 4th session, I can probably rebuild a marriage after stupidity. That's very architectural of you, she said with the hint of a smile. But marriages aren't buildings, Grayson. They're living things. They need constant maintenance, not just repairs after disasters. Fair point. Annoyingly accurate point. By week 5, Lydia and I were actually talking again. Real talking, not the careful polite distance we'd been maintaining. And slowly, painfully, like putting together a puzzle with half the pieces missing, we started figuring out how to be married to each other again. 6 months later, and life looks different. Not perfect, not healed like some fairy tale ending, but different in a way that feels real. Lydia and I are still doing therapy every other week because apparently healthy marriages require maintenance, not just crisis intervention. We're cautious with each other now, careful in a way we never were before. She doesn't go to parties without me anymore, and I actually pay attention when she talks instead of mentally drafting building plans. Progress, I guess. As for Trent Monroe? Last I heard, he's selling motivational t-shirts online. His bestseller is called Stay Humble, which is irony so thick you could build a house on it. The universe has a sense of humor after all. I still get invited to charity galas and networking events, fancy rooftop parties with champagne and live bands. I politely decline every single one because honestly, nothing good ever comes from champagne, tuxedos, and dollar bills. I've learned my lesson about trusting crowds and celebrations. Last week, I ran into Trent at a gas station on the south side. Pure coincidence, the kind that makes you believe in cosmic comedy. He was pumping gas into a Honda Civic that had definitely seen better days, wearing a hoodie and looking like someone who'd learned what humility tastes like when it's force-fed to you by life. Our eyes met across the pumps. He froze, clearly deciding whether to acknowledge me or pretend he'd gone blind. I smiled, walked over casually and said, "Still on the night, buddy?" He looked away, finished pumping, and got in his car without a word. I watched him drive off, feeling nothing but mild satisfaction. Because here's what I learned. Revenge doesn't always need shouting or drama or public confrontations. Sometimes you just let silence and success do the talking. Now he knows who I am. And more importantly, I remembered who I am too.